On this week's podcast, John and I discuss the Mark Kelly controversy and the Lane Kiffin sweepstakes.
Bald,
blind,
and buddies.
Timmy C., how are you, my good friend? Happy Thanksgiving. A couple days late, but we'll talk about that. How was your weekend, pal?
It was good. It was good.
Yeah.
I saw somebody beat the tush push. The Bears figured out a potential solution to the tush push.
Well, I think that is in its death throes, if you will. I think that, number one, it's impossible to I don't want to say regulate or legislate, but to officiate, essentially. And further, I think, people are like, well, if you can't, people are upset because you can't stop it. No, the defense can't do the same thing. So it's an unfair advantage to the offense. And thirdly, I always joke, there's that famous Babylon Bee where it says motorcyclist who identifies as bicyclist breaks all the bicycle records, right? I don't just grab my daughter and, pull her along in a race. It's just, it rings. I understand that Philadelphia is good at it and good on them, and it has nothing to do with them. But either A, give the defense the same opportunities to, push players, or B, just get rid of it, because it's not. I think it violates the spirit of competition. So.
Yeah, I just like the innovation because the Bears sent in a cornerback just to force a fumble.
Yes, they did.
I thought that was cool. The spirit of innovation is alive.
Yes. Who says this isn't the greatest country in the world, right?
So speaking of innovation, John, AI is a big thing. And I've used AI. We are through the looking glass here. I've created an alternative intro for the show using your voice with your permission. Are you ready to hear it?
I am absolutely. You have my permission, bar none, and I am absolutely elated to hear this. And for the 12 and 12 of you that are listening, this is the very first time I'm hearing it as well. So let her rip.
All right. Imagine this, folks.
What you got for me, Timmy C? Before we get started, I wanted to let you know that I've thought about it a lot, and writ large, Donald Trump is doing the right things. And I've come to realize there was no insurrection on January 6th. You were right. I never thought I would say it, but you were, and that's what this podcast is about.
Isn't that scary, John?
It's very much scary, and you are such an asshole to do that on January 6th without my knowledge. But touche, well done. That's kind of, it even sounds like my cadence, and I use writ large and
so I put in the text, and then I trained it on just a few minutes, maybe 2 to 3 minutes of your speech, because clearly I have plenty of it to feed it, and that's what it did. It's pretty amazing.
Subtle, Tim. Subtle. Thanks. That is awesome. Now, I have a favor to ask of you.
What's that?
Will you do the inverse and do you for next week?
Sure.
Just feed the algorithm your voice and your sort of sayings and such. And maybe you can do, I was wrong, January 6th was in fact an insurrection, which it was. So, but I appreciate that. Well done.
What we should do is an A to B, where we make a recording of you saying something and then the AI saying something, and then our listeners have to chime in which one was the real John.
Okay, that's fair. I like it.
Anyways, we'll keep working on this.
We could give away prizes. I could give away some of my Westchester nuts or something for those that get it right. Yeah. So, hey, Timmy, real quick, before we get started on today's podcast, though, I have some quick hits from the news that just today, Cyber Monday, struck me. Is it okay if we do it real quick? And nobody knows about these. This is completely unplanned. I just want to hear Timmy's instantaneous true reaction, as it were. Okay?
Yep.
Number one is it me or is it just completely irrational how much the news loves bad weather? We're expecting a snowstorm here. No big deal, right? 3, 4, 5, 6 inches. Some places are going to get harder. Some places are going to hit less. They literally are elated. There's that famous line by Alan Greenspan, the former chairman of the Federal Reserve, and he said, Americans are suffering from an irrational exuberance. Am I not correct in saying the same thing applies to the news? And I understand it's all about economics because the weather drives the baseline. It really does. I mean, the revenue goes through the roof when there's a snowstorm coming. But it's bordering on manic. Am I wrong, Tim?
I agree. I also think if you think about how fragmented the news is, the weather applies to everybody, so you at least have a chance of hitting a large demographic. And maybe that's why they focus on the weather.
Yeah, I would like to believe that there's a nobility behind that purpose, but I think it's as simple as the bottom line. It makes the networks make money and so forth and so on, and I think it's that simple. But you're absolutely right. The weather is bipartisan. There's even that progressive ad, with that fellow Dr. Rick, we can't stop you from becoming your parents, where he talks about the weather, and it is hysterical. And the one guy says, it's not about the dew point. You had another quick hit, though. You had something.
Oh, that was the tush push. I already hit it.
Oh, you did? Okay. Yeah. Well, here's my second one. I am the biggest sports fan in the world, but two events just today have come to the forefront. The aforementioned Bears are now the number one seed in the NFC, and if the playoffs were to start today, they'd be the number one seed. So I texted my cousins, all of whom are from Chicago, and I said, perhaps the end times are near, with the Chicago Bears finally having a chance to win something. Although I will tell you that 1985 Bears team, and I was old enough to remember it, is the single greatest football team that I think has ever played organized football. So I'll stand by that. But to that end, the Eagles fans are upset, and rightfully so. Their team is really struggling, and they have talent. I think the offensive line is beat up a lot more than they're letting on, and so forth and so on. But, their offensive coordinator from last year, Kellen Moore, became the now head coach of the New Orleans Saints. That's really a testament to the Eagles organization. When your assistant coaches get poached, it means you're doing something right. Well, now they have this new fellow, and I won't name his name for, just out of respect, but he is the new offensive coordinator, and the team is clearly struggling. Well, I know about this because one of my neighbors got involved, and in a good way. He on social media, he had basically said, hey, Eagles fans, be better than this or something. And the Eagles organization called him because this fellow, this offensive coordinator, is receiving death threats. Oh. And that's also in line with Lane Kiffin. And Lane Kiffin, who makes it very easy to dislike him, has left Ole Miss. They are about to make the playoffs for the first time, and he has left Ole Miss and taken a new job at LSU. And again, to Nick Saban's credit, he said, look, you can blame Lane Kiffin for this, but this is a college football problem, and we have to get our hands around it. Is there something in sports that just brings out the worst in people as well as the best?
Well, probably. And here, we're gonna cut to the chase. We're doing an audible here on the podcast, John.
I'm ready.
My whack job of the week is anybody who cares about where Lane Kiffin goes. I don't care.
I'll let you explain that in better detail. Okay, I didn't mean to steal your thunder. Somebody said the other day, they said, listen, it's a job. If you got offered 10 grand more, you jump ship too. I mean, there just isn't any loyalty the way that there once was. And that's why I also wonder, was there actually, or is it just romanticized? You know how you kind of remember history, like, oh, we just didn't have these problems, and everybody stayed at the same job for 30 years. I just don't think that's true. And if somebody offered me 25 grand more, or whatever it may be, and this guy's getting offered millions more,
no,
I don't blame him.
I mean, I hate to say it, I sort of agree with Nick Saban, but the problem is he is choosing to go to a program where he can win. And the old-time coaches would build a program that would win, right? He's just moving around like a player. It's sad and it's ridiculous. And anybody who spends time on where's Lane Kiffin going should focus on your own life. There's children, there's a job, there's a spouse who needs you.
Right.
Turn it off.
But what does it tell you, too, that Lane Kiffin's making $13 million a year, and the university, just as part of their incentives, they're going to help offset his move, pick up, if he sells his house and he up to $500,000, they're going to pay him back. So when these universities cry poverty, it's like, I don't know if I want to believe you anymore. No. Right?
Yep. And
the third one is Cyber Monday. Do you know how big Cyber Monday is? I just found this out, that it's something of a factor of 3 times as big as Black Friday, which I think is reflective of new technology and so forth. But there is a famous contrarian, a sort of a cynic, if you will, by the name of Scott Galloway, who teaches at NYU. And the Washington Post about 10 years ago had a contest, and he submitted anonymously, apparently, and won as to let's rename Cyber Monday, or let's rename, Black Friday. And, of course, Cyber Monday, they ran that concurrently. But for Black Friday, do you know what he called it?
What?
He said, the day I'm excited to get to trample someone to save $8 on an espresso. And I just, what is this hysteria? Do you engage in that behavior? The Cyber Monday, the Black Friday, the whole deal?
We used to when we, years ago when we were graduate students or things like that, but not so much now. I mean, I think Black Friday is physically limited by space, right? And Cyber Monday isn't. So I think that's why it's gotten so much bigger.
Yeah, and I just think that, I mean, I don't like going to stores, never have. And if you walk around a mall, it is sort of seeing the decaying of society, because it's just the paradigm has shifted. Everything's online.
Yeah.
I mean, when people tell me, oh, I got this at Amazon, it's like, you didn't have to tell me where you got it. I knew it was Amazon. Everything's Amazon. It's your one-stop shop for everything. Is it not?
Well, some of us try. Like I try to shop local sometimes because you can check things out physically.
Of course.
So that works for me. But
Yeah. I agree. So. But Timmy, let me give you we're throwing another wild card here, which is I have the answer to the trivia question from last week, and you, good sir, have a question of your own this week, right?
I do.
So Notre Dame, and again, irrational exuberance associated with sports, got some bad press, and I think it was unduly deserved, because they won the game against Syracuse last week 70-7. And that led to the question is this the most points that Notre Dame's ever scored? And the answer is a resounding no. Do you know what the most points scored ever was?
90.
You had guessed. No, it was 142.
Whoa.
And it's over 120 years ago. It was on October 28th, 1905. The team scored 27 touchdowns, which was called after 33 minutes. And they were playing against the American College of Medicine and Surgery.
Oh, man.
And they scored 142 points. So, it puts in perspective. But that's magnificent beyond belief. And that's kind of running it up. So.
That is
right. But what's your trivia question this week, Timmy? Surprise us.
George is a common pseudonym for writers, apparently. So the trivia question is, do you know the real names of both George Eliot and George Orwell?
Good call.
Yeah, we'll see what we get.
I like that. All right. I think what we'll do is we'll start alternating the trivia questions.
Sure.
Because you have good ones. I do more sports and politics. I like that, though. That's a good one. So I think I had heard George Orwell, but there's no chance I'm getting George Eliot.
Yeah.
So, yeah. All right, Timmy, what are we talking about? You were the one who suggested this topic, and I resoundingly agreed. What are we talking about today?
So Senator Mark Kelly and a couple of his colleagues on the Hill put out a short video that basically said don't obey patently illegal orders or some such. And he has drawn the attention of the executive branch, as you can imagine. Face some blowback. He's standing firm, which you can respect. And so we wanted to talk about the controversy, the question, the legal questions, and some such related to this.
Well, actually, you kind of stole my thunder because my hero this week is associated with this. But let's defer to you first. What is your feeling, firstly, about the 6 Congress people who Pete Hegseth, that Socrates of verbiage, is calling the seditious 6. Pete Hegseth, for those of you who don't know, is our defense secretary. What is your feeling about the 6 Democratic members of Congress, all of whom were either military or intelligence veterans, advising service members that they can refuse illegal orders? Because I have some pretty strong opinions about it myself, but I'll defer to you first.
Well, so first of all, at one level, it seems obvious, right? They're just saying an obvious truth. And so you'd say, well, okay, no big deal. But then you say to yourself, why did you have to make a video to say the obvious if it's obvious? And that's where I sort of fault them. Did this need to be said? Did it need to be said in that way? Like, that's, if I was going to find fault, that's what I would find fault with. I would point out that the Universal Code of Military Justice says that you can disobey a patently illegal order, right? So we're talking about massacring a village, not putting your Jeep in a no parking zone, right? And some of these questions are, should American forces be on American soil? Those are probably questions for a judge and not a sergeant on the ground.
Okay, so I think, number one, I tend to, and this is one of the things that I've always lamented about and again, when you enter the arena of politics, it is a blood sport. Bitter Pat, our buddy, used to say that's the real competition is politics. Forget sports. To that end, when you enter the arena, you have to be prepared for anything and everything. And to that end, I've always lamented how George W. Bush, who was in the Champaign Division of the Texas Air National Guard and had the last name Bush, was able to question the patriotism and military service of a decorated veteran like John Kerry. Say what you want about John Kerry's service, he was there. Same thing with Al Gore. He was a reporter, but he was on the front lines. He was in the military. So I've always sort of taken deference to people that have actually served as opposed to people who are throwing in rocks from the outside. That's number one. Pete Hegseth, however, is a veteran and has earned my admiration for that point. But my criticism of the Trump administration is deep and wide, obviously. But if there's somebody who can actually question it, I think Mark Kelly is pretty well positioned. He was in the short list for Kamala Harris to be the vice president. My understanding was, after they had done opposition research on that he has a bad divorce in his background and so forth. President Obama, apparently, according to significant reporting, had encouraged him to try and run for the nomination before they had anointed Kamala Harris, because if you remember, Obama and Michelle Obama held out for a week or two before they sort of bestowed their blessing, if you will, upon the choice for Kamala Harris. But what I'm getting at is Mark Kelly is of significant stock and note and has the gravitas and ability to speak to this. He was also an astronaut. So, if there's anybody who has the ability to speak to it, it would be Mark Kelly, as well as previous veterans of both intelligence and military. To that end, however, I'm always reminded of what my father used to say about Richard Nixon, which is he had his doubts as to whether or not Nixon was guilty of the Watergate break-in. But when he got in front of the country and said, well, the American public needs to know if their president's a crook. Well, I'm not a crook. The fact that you have to say it says that you are a crook. So this is not an idle exercise in scenarios. This is a reality. The Trump administration is now legitimately being accused of war crimes, and I'll get into that in a second. But have you followed the reporting on these attacks on these drug boats in the Caribbean and so forth?
So that is a case where I think disobeying an order may make sense if it's in the commission of a war crime, right? And so I think that could be an example of this, yes.
Okay. And again, there's very valuable reporting in the Washington Post, and I know you're going to go, oh, the Washington Compost. Okay, let's put that aside and let's talk about the author, a fellow by the name of Max Boot, who was a senior strategic advisor for the Romney campaign. I mean, his credentials in the Republican Party are deep. And he said, look, the point of this exercise isn't really to get a conviction, because what they're trying to do is drag Mark Kelly back into active service and have him tried before a military tribunal. It's, in fact, to intimidate current or retired officers who might be tempted to speak out about Trump and Hegseth, trying to compel the armed forces to do their bidding regardless of the law. This isn't a theoretical concern. It's probably something that has already happened and is likely to happen again. He was specifically referring to these attacks on these boats in Venezuela. And what the Post has done, and whether or not this reporting can be validated with other sources, remains to be seen, but they are claiming that there were two people. There was a military strike, which in and of itself is probably illegal because Congress didn't authorize it. And again, I will give wide latitude to presidents, though, because Congress has given up all responsibility. They have thrown away the key of responsibility a long time ago. So people going, how dare Trump do this? Obama did the same thing. George W. Bush did the same thing, because Congress doesn't want to have blood on their hands. They just want the president to act unilaterally, and then if the you-know-what hits the fan, they can act like they had nothing to do with it. But again, they ordered this strike on this boat. Two people survived, and it's rumored, at least reported by reputable sources, we'll find out in the coming weeks, that Pete Hegseth specifically gave an order that those two people are to be killed. Now, that's a violation of acts of war, the Uniform Code of Military Justice, all these sorts of things. It's very likely a war crime if it can be proven. So, this is a big deal.
Yes, that is absolutely a big deal.
Well, I'm torn on this, because I tend to believe, and, whether I voted for Trump or not, we only have one commander-in-chief at a time. I'm a big believer in that. And I see other presidents acting unilaterally, whether it be Obama in Syria, whether it be George W. Bush in Iraq and Afghanistan, things that, people kind of brush under the rug, as it were. So I can't necessarily go after Trump too hard on this. I have to be clear on this. But the fact that 6 of these military officers, retired or otherwise, felt it necessary to issue this says something about the current state we're in, and that's what makes me nervous. Could they be grandstanding? Yeah, I think they might very well be in violation of the Logan Act, which is trying to, institute foreign policy, simultaneously to U.S. foreign policy. So I recognize that. I do.
And I think they could be in violation of the Uniform Code of Military Justice. So
maybe, but again, Jack Goldsmith, he was a Harvard law professor who was the head of the Office of Legal Counsel in the George W. Bush administration, wrote, if the Washington Post facts are correct, It appears that the Special Operations Forces committed murder when the two men were blown apart in the water. A working group of former judge advocates general who weighed in, orders to kill survivors in an attack at sea are patently illegal. Anyone who issues or follows such orders can and should be prosecuted for war crimes, murder, or both. Mm-hmm. And I think, to me, it's more telling about Trump's reaction. But by the same token, Trump's such a fabulous that everything is, these people should be put to death, and this is sedition and so forth. But I think, there's that famous line in Macbeth, thou doth protest too much. And I think there is an element of truth to that this is not a hypothetical we're seeing. And maybe these intelligence officers, I'm just presupposing, I don't know, I'm not privy to any of the information, have more information that you and I as a general member of the public has. Timmy, is that possible?
I think so. And I think another thing to keep in mind is, regardless of the outcome, if you reject an order that was lawfully given, right, at least given through the chain of command, your career in the military is over.
Yeah, I don't know. I think it's really easy to say I wouldn't obey an illegal order, but there's a lot of gray area in the execution of war, is there not? I mean, the fog of war is a reality.
Yeah.
And
so even if you're right, your career is over. Like, and you got people who've been in there 20 plus years, right, throwing it away because you think an order, So I think it's got to be pretty black and white. And I think the narco boat survivors is probably one of those cases, if those facts bear out. But it's a big deal.
But again, these are not idle hypotheticals. Trump and apparently the entire airspace over Venezuela is now being monitored, which is usually a precursor to attacks. And if the United States security is threatened by this, well, first of all, you know how I feel about drugs. I think that trying to cut off the supply is a fool's errand. We're better suited to deal with the demand side of it and legalize it and regulate it and so forth. But that's for another day. But the airspace over Venezuela has been shut off. The president is attacking these narco boats. And of course, the reason there's really no pushback is it's a winning campaign issue to say, I'm trying to prevent the flow of drugs. But a couple things spring to mind. Number one, President Trump is also about to pardon the former president of Honduras, who is rumored to have taken $1 million payoff from El Chapo. That's number one. So he's talking out of both sides of his mouth, which for Trump means he's talking. I understand that. But secondarily, after January 6th, and I know we make light of it with the AI voice and so forth, Mark Milley, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, had a one-on-one with the Speaker of the House. And the reason that he did was Mike Pence, he was concerned about his, possibility of being compromised by Trump, had basically said, look, we're prepared to disobey an unlawful order because they were concerned that Trump was going to use the military. Now, this might be, fatalism. This might be dramatic, these kinds of things. But if there's someone who can do it, it's Trump. And further evidence of that was provided by Ty Cobb, his former attorney. And again, I understand attorneys are not paragons of virtue, but Ty Cobb has basically come out and said, look, the Constitution at this point, based on my experience with Trump, may not be enough. He's evil. That's what he called him. Now, again, I'll be the first person to say that's real rich of you. You also worked for him, right? So, I see the duplicitousness, and you get this guy in a court of law, it's going to be easy to destroy his credibility. But is this hypothetical? Do you think Trump just keeps pushing like a kid, keep pushing to see how far he can go and until somebody pushes back?
I don't know. I really almost take an action by action transactional look at what he does, and then I don't know if there's a grand strategy. It's perplexing to me.
Right, but you can't have it both ways, Tim. You said part of the reason that it can't be a coup on January 6th is there was no coherent strategy. I made the argument that's Trump. Well, now you're using that, to justify, maybe this, maybe that, blah, blah.
No, I said I don't look for a coherent strategy.
Fair enough. I mean, are you not at least concerned with how far this is being pushed? And again, you're not. It's like being a politician who comes out and says, I'm for criminals. Your career, to your point in the military, your career as a politician is probably over. So you're not going to find many people shedding tears over killing suspected narco boats. But again, I haven't seen any evidence that they're narco boats, nor have I seen any author. Let's assume the worst case scenario. These are the worst people in the world. The president doesn't have authorization to do this.
Yeah, well, think about it this way, though, John. With about 10 minutes of time, I made a relatively convincing audio deepfake. Right? It is so hard to know what actually is happening out there. I don't even know if there was a boat. Right? Like, I assume there was. But it's
we know that,
it's
for
so
instance,
hard.
Trump is going to pardon the former Honduran president who's serving a 45-year prison sentence in the United States for drug trafficking. I don't know how you can square that. It leads me to ask the question, where is the money coming from? I'm sure that this person somehow through back channels is paying Trump. It's not crazy to think that. And the Oval Office to me has become essentially a cash register to this guy. That's not to say that others haven't, cashed in on their presidency, post-presidency, but he's doing it active presidency. And to me, that's the difference. And that's what makes me so nervous, because I don't think there's any guardrails anymore. I mean, the American public saw this. And so I have to accept that reality. The American public saw this. He had 4 terms. He denied the results of an election in 2020. They had a choice, and they could have impeached him and completely removed him from political office. They didn't do so. They tried to prosecute him. I will be the first person to tell you that lawfare was involved in New York and other things, but he needs to answer, and he probably will never answer for January 6th. And yet he got reelected, and pretty resoundingly. Yeah. So I have to accept the will of the American public. That doesn't mean I like it, and it doesn't mean that I'm sitting here content that, because he's the president, he's probably acting with benevolence and goodwill. I just don't see it. I think he may very well be evil, as Ty Cobb has suggested.
Yeah, and I do think, and it is not trivial, but I think all of us need to act in accord with our conscience in pretty much everything we do, right? And whether you're a soldier or whatever, like that's part of living in this modern world right now.
What would you do if you were put in this scenario? If you were the pilot? I find it to be a fool's errand to say I would refuse that order. It's coming from the President of the United States.
Yeah, it's like the line from Solzhenitsyn, the line between good and evil runs through every human heart. I can't speculate. I like to think what I would do, but I don't know.
All right, this is the final thought from Mark Kelly, or from Max Boot on Mark Kelly, and let me just read it to you and see what your feelings are. He says, there is a good reason that Mark Kelly and the other lawmakers felt compelled to warn service members not to carry out illegal orders. That seems to be precisely what the military is now doing at the behest of an administration that clearly disdains any limits on the president's imperial authority and treats war crimes as a joke. It is not, in fact, Kelly who should be facing justice because, again, they're trying to pull him back to active duty and put him before a military tribunal. It'll likely be dismissed. But rather Hegseth and the admiral who followed his orders. So he's basically saying, look, and again, this might be a little dramatic and, there's gray areas and so forth, and nobody's going to shed a tear over Venezuelan drug boats. I don't even know if they came from Venezuela. I shouldn't say that. But it makes me nervous that the law seems to be... I'm reminded of my buddy Todd. And one time he blew through this yield sign right after he got his license. So we're 17, 18, 19. He blows through this yield sign. I said, Todd, that's a yield. He goes, yield. I yield at stop signs. And it was kind of like, that seems to me, the law is sort of a yield for the Trump administration. So.
Yeah.
Any final thoughts on that? Do you think that Hegseth... I mean, I find it very difficult to believe that they'll ever be able to prove anything. But I worry that we're put in this position, number one, that these former military and intelligence officers felt the need to issue this video. But by the same token, I don't like that they issued the video because we can only have one president at the same time. So I'm torn on this.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah. And far be it from me, but I actually am going to justify Trump. I don't think he's doing anything that other presidents haven't done. It's just a combination of who he is with everything else that just makes me nervous.
I will make a prediction, though, that nothing of substance is going to eventually happen to Mark Kelly over this. Like he's not. Of course, he's not going to. He's not going to wind up in Leavenworth.
No, that's not the point. He did the same thing with James Comey. I mean, today the appeals court basically said that Alina Habba was improperly appointed as a U.S. attorney. But again, that's not the point. It's the process. It's to make these people haul James Comey into court. Letitia James, same thing. Nothing's going to happen to Mark Kelly. And I'm almost as completely sure that nothing's going to happen to Trump or to Pete Hegseth. Yeah. But it doesn't make it right what they're doing.
Right.
Well, Timmy, why don't you tell us your whack job of the week?
I blew my whack job. It was anybody who cares about Lane Kiffin.
Why is that, by the way? What is it? Just Is he symbolic, or is it?
He's symbolic. So
I feel the same way about people who follow the Royals. I don't understand it. Like this is the lucky sperm club, as Warren Buffett says.
We were watching.
Cares?
We were watching another game, or maybe it was halftime, and they cut to this guy like in a hotel room on Zoom on some laptop with like the latest update, and I'm like, this is not news. I do not care.
It was on the evening news tonight. It was like the third or fourth story. First was the weather, then was Pete Hegseth and these boats, and I think then it was Lane Kiffin.
Where did he go? Did he make his decision?
He did. He's going to LSU. He's going to become.
You know what this reminded me of? It reminded me of the Ross and Rachel Friends things in the 90s. Will they? Won't they? Well, I could give her about Lane Kiffin and his location.
I know, but I do understand the value of mindless entertainment. Do you not? I mean, it's a nice escape. I mean, you're a psychiatrist. You gotta understand the value of being able to separate divorce from reality for a bit, right? And there's probably a projection on this idea of Lane Kiffin, and people love to hate him, and it's sports and blah. But you're absolutely right. You're not going to hear me, but I feel the same way about the Royals, and Watch, now we're going to actually get people calling into the end of the podcast, all tens and tens of you listening, because I said something negative about the Royals. Because if you put I remember reading this one time, Fareed Zakaria, who at the time was the managing editor of Newsweek, I had met him. He said, it's absolutely a mathematical certainty. If we print Princess Di or any of the Royals on the front cover of Newsweek, and this is back when Newsweek had some gravitas, it's going to be our bestseller of the year. 52 issues, that's going to be number one.
Yeah, and we'll put Lane Kiffin in our search engine optimized text for this podcast, too. That'll give us a few more listens.
Right. People love villains. They love the story, and you're absolutely right, though. But I also think this is reflective of the 24-hour news media, right? I mean, you got to fill airtime, right?
Yeah,
I mean, Johnny Carson had that famous line.
Yeah. I
don't know. Did you ever see that when Charles Grodin was on with Johnny Carson? And Charles Grodin was always sort of a frump, and he was, moan and whine, but he was hysterical. And he says, "You don't really care what I have to say." And Johnny says, "No, I don't. I have to fill an hour a night. I'm looking for warm bodies." I mean, there is an element of that they got 24 hours of news. You got to throw something on there, right?
Yep.
Well, Timmy, my hero this week is actually, you ready for this?
Yeah.
The United States Congress. Perhaps
what?
the least popular thing in the entire country.
Is this AI? Is this AI, John?
No, this is the real John Bolin.
The real John Bolin.
You know what? We should come up with a safety word, but then you'll just incorporate it.
We should come up with a safety word. I like that, actually.
Well, we'll do Lemon Tree, which was the famous one from Seinfeld, where when he's trying to he leaves her a nasty message, and then it turns out she was traveling, so he has Jerry and he break into the apartment when she gets home to go steal it, and he's like, "Lemon Tree, Lemon Tree." Anyhow, he in order to distract her, he pulls her into the bedroom, and she comes out and she goes, "Is that what you really felt the need to tell me, George, that your father wears sneakers in the pool?" My hero this week is perhaps the most unpopular aggregate body, other than that houses Lane Kiffin right now, the United States Congress. Because there is a feeling, and I happen to embrace it, it's made abundantly clear by authors such as, George Will and Bret Stephens and others, that Congress needs to discover its Article 1 authority again, right? Congress, by its very definition, is supposed to be messy, but they are actually going to hold hearings, and they've started to push back on the Trump administration, even Republicans, and they are issuing subpoenas to some of these admirals that were involved in this example. And it's a small step, Tim, but I'm reminded of the famous line that, look, Rome wasn't built in a day, and every great journey begins with a first step. Congress needs to rediscover the fact that it is the Article 1, the very first body mentioned in the United States Constitution, and take control. And they are starting to issue subpoenas, talk to people. They're finding out about this. It might be a small step. It might go nowhere. But it is indicative of something that needs to happen. And this isn't a partisan issue. This isn't a Republican-Democrat. This is a Congress needs to discover its backbone. Yes. And it's about time they did. So I'm actually making Congress, can you believe it, Timmy, my hero of the week.
That is awesome. And I agree. I would just fine-tune. They don't need to take control. They just need to assert their actual given authority, right?
Right.
They need to take back
delineated.
They need to take back the control that they delegated and slept on for a long time.
It's particularly acute when it comes to the exercise of foreign policy and military, because, as I said before, they want the best of both worlds. Go ahead, Mr. President, and if it goes wrong, we're gonna blame you. Yeah. Right? It's just it's terrible. But I am really happy that it appears that literally Congress, this might be a bridge too far even for Congress. Killing innocent civilians in the Caribbean, hanging onto a boat, is a bridge too far even for them, and that's impressive. So they are my hero of the week.
Yeah, for sure. I hear.
Well, Timmy, as always, I enjoy the heck out of these conversations, and you know about this, but we'll file a teaser. We have some big guests coming early 2026. Just got another confirmation today, so that'll be good, right?
Yeah.
And you've booked a couple other people that you're going to bring on, right?
Correct.
Awesome. So we'll keep it growing, and we're going to go from any update, by the way, on countries or any news or on the listeners and so forth.
We're getting some hits on YouTube, which is good. And that's kind of the big stuff.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Excellent. Well, listen, Timmy, as always, have a great week. And this is John Bullen signing off, saying, hey, it's always okay to disobey an illegal order. But in the interim, misbehave, drive fast, take chances.
And this is Tim saying, if everybody likes what you're doing, you're probably not doing anything worthwhile. You do have to look yourself in the mirror. Take care out there.